Alrighty, Grandma Kim, it's great to have you here today.
It's wonderful to be here.
My pleasure to have you. And we're going to be talking about truth and reconciliation and give the opportunity to share your story and to share the story with the rest of our community and to educate them as well. So I'm going to first start out by asking, what does Truth and Reconciliation Day mean to you?
What does Truth and Reconciliation Day mean to me? Well, it means that there is a countrywide acknowledgement of harms done and a moment or an invitation for people to spend a moment reflecting on those wrongs and perhaps how to do better. For me, it's not a day where people should be feeling guilty and heavy-hearted for themselves, because I'm sure the good people of this country wouldn't have chosen that kind of treatment of entire nations of people. But for me, it means a moment to be able to speak our truth, to provide authentic voice, to validate the lives lost, and to really honor perhaps a new road moving forward. It is a difficult time. It's an emotional day for me. There are many moments where I want to cry and I'm so angry still. But the opportunity to be able to hold presence and share our truths and feel like I can be heard and we can be heard collectively and across the country, there is this genuine moment of reflection and attention on us is it's very powerful, and it is a bit of healing. I always equate it to a bit of Scotch tape on a heart, that is very fractured, and on that day, that tape turns into a bit of duct tape. It's a little bit stronger as I feel this sense of unity and connection and remembrance.
Thank you for sharing that. Yeah. So how do you think, as non-Indigenous people, can we best support the goals of Truth and Reconciliation and the 94 calls to action?
So how can you support it? As a community and as individuals, collectively and individually, there's so much that can be done. The 94 calls to action are policy suggestions. So in terms of business, there's many areas that you can draw from one of those calls to action and actually implement it in your policy making or policy changes. I think for me, I would just like to see the community read it. It was released in 2015, and most Canadians have not read it, and they don't recognize that the 94 calls to action, you can read a Coles Note version, or you can read an extended version. You can read a legal version, you can read a policy version. You can focus on different areas because it's divided up into different areas. And my challenge is to choose one, just choose one, and champion it. Breathe life into it, work your way through it, and encourage those in your circle, whether it be professional or social or family, just your network at large. Encourage them to take a look at it and have some discussions and then do something. Like actually walk it out. Don't just talk about it, but do it. Find ways to do it, whether anybody recognizes it or not. And it might be just the way that you think about things. It might be as subtle as that. It could be something tangible that you do. I think a lot of people look at the calls to action as some sort of a handout, and we're not looking for a handout as nations across this country. We're sovereign nations and proud of that. We need hands up by people getting educated and not turning a blind eye or getting so mired in, I guess, guilt and remorse and shame that they become inactive. I think if they could just read it and then choose one and champion that in all ages and stages. So tell your children about this. Tell your grandparents about this. I mean, those are two ends of the spectrum that may have different approaches to it and maybe different resistances or, lack of knowledge about it, but change is possible through your passion and belief first. So as much as I believe in this, as much as I can encourage people to do this, at the end of the day, it's really up to you. So what are you going to do? And how are you going to do that? How are you going to manifest that so that it's meaningful, so that it's actually aligned with the intentions of what the 94 calls to action are. And 94 sounds like a really big number, but really, when we look at those 94 calls to action, we're actually spoon feeding Canadians at large.
Mm-hmm.
We are giving you the solutions to never make that mistake again, to try and heal the wounds of the past. It took 150 years to get where we're at. And Justice Murray Sinclair has spoken about it may take 150 years, to kind of get to a place of healing. And he highly recommends it's through education. It's through the school system that really this should be most heavily weighted. But I would say any and everybody at any age, any stage, any ethnicity, any gender, to please read it. Just read the calls to action. Get familiar with the different categories and see what really resonates your passion, what really gets you fired up, what really feels like something you could do. So maybe choose something really easy when you first enter it, and then build up on that. To date, Canada has a failing grade in addressing the calls to action. And I'm not here to bash Canada, but I think that they could do better. This took 6 years of intense trauma work, and it changed the lives of so many, and many of the people who contributed to creating this report no longer walk the earth. And in any family, our ancestors are important, our relatives are vital to our sense of self and belonging, and a life walk is heightened by that honor and by that great love. And these 94 calls to action come from that place. They come from that great love and belief in change. Right? It's not about pointing fingers. It's about manifesting that hand up that I was speaking about earlier.
Yeah. So it's words to action, not
Yes.
just the words.
Yes.
Are there specific resources you can recommend for someone who wants to learn more about the history and experiences of Indigenous peoples?
Such a good question. I mean, there are so many resources available now. It's actually shocking how many there are, but Reconciliation Canada has really assembled a beautiful list and a vetted list, because there are many people who are trying to make some money now, creating these resources that aren't actually vetted and based on lived experiences or truthful connections. So I recommend going there first.
Okay.
I think that they're solid, that's their mandate. They have done a really, really good job of making it accessible. You don't need to have money to do this. I mean, Google's an amazing deliverer of wisdom and knowledge, because it's a great house. It's like a virtual library of things that you can access. You can also get tangible copies of the TRC report, the 94 calls to action, and so you can get the 94 calls to action in a little booklet form, and you can actually get the full report in a tangible book form, because some of us are not in the tech age.
Yeah.
I didn't start it until I was almost in my 40s, so I remember trying to figure out how to turn a computer on. So for our older listeners, maybe this is not the way that they want to go, and they actually want to just write the government and say, please send me a book.
Yeah.
And they can do that. Reconciliation Canada also accommodates that. And we know that mail is like something underused these days. And some people just love turning the pages of a book. It's a great way to go. But that's my first recommendation, is to go through Reconciliation Canada. I've done some work with them in the past. I trust them. I feel good about what they're doing. They're actually guided and founded on actual real survivor stories and supports and guidance. So I'd leave it at that.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
How can we ensure that the spirit of Truth and Reconciliation Day is carried beyond a single day and integrated into our everyday lives?
I'd want to ask you that question because, I come from an emotional connection to this. I have family members who went to residential school. I have, the intergenerational burden of what that means, what that's like, and I'm still unpackaging that.
Yeah, and I think for myself, for my answer back to you, it is one that we're talking about it and helping me to understand and talking about what you physically feel, emotionally feel. I don't know it, but having you share it, it helps to educate me and to be more supportive, to help to tell the message, to talk about it, and to share that this is real.
That feels really good to hear. And my response to that is very healing to be heard and to have the dialogue. So many shy away from the dialogue because it triggers you emotionally. I mean, any human who witnesses or hears about the harm of another, especially of children, is very difficult. And it's never easy for us. For as long as the report's been out, it still doesn't equate to the intergenerational kind of harm and truth and experience that I carry. But it also, for me, is something I don't want to fall off people's radar. I don't want to make you uncomfortable, but I do need to talk about it sometimes. And I do need to explore what your thoughts are. Like, how could I support you in supporting me so that together we move forward in that supportive way? It's not for me, it's not an easy answer, but I would like to see this manifested in lots of ways, not just through dialogues, through policy changes, through actual hand-up opportunities to speak and to share and to support like authors and artists and fireside chats and not just in the month of September, right, all year round, and see how those are interconnected with like the social economic disparities that Indigenous people still continue to experience in this country because of things like the Indian Act. And the Indian Act is directly responsible, for residential school and why the 94 calls to action came to light and how, all of these connections for the average Canadian, they have no awareness of. So generating awareness, creating awareness, making it a constant, never one-off, is a very powerful way, not only to address the importance of that day and the kind of spreading out throughout the year. It is a validation to us that we are being heard and that we do have allies and we do have community members who actually willingly choose to step forward and say, I want to learn about this. I'm not going to wait for you to give me a talk or to write a book or to do a podcast. I'm actually going to do some research and figure this out. I trust in the common sense and the good-heartedness of the average Canadian, but also, the town of Whitby itself and what it is that this community wants to see. And as we see this community become more and more diverse, people are coming with an understanding of trauma. They're coming from spaces and places where they've experienced great harm, great challenges, and they've come here to have a better life. But that doesn't mean that all that disappears. It stays with you, and you're constantly working at dismantling that and trying to heal that and share that. And you do need to talk about it. You do need to feel it. You do need to validate that this is still, somewhere in your cell memory, and that it's okay. And there are spaces where you can have that sense of safety and maybe offloading or dismantling or healing. I mean, there's lots of different words you can use in the journey of navigating cultural genocide. And that's what we've experienced in this country. It's a really difficult word for most Canadians, but I'm not going to back down from that word. I'm going to stand by that word. That is what we experience. There are thousands and thousands of children's bodies being discovered across the country. We always knew that they were missing. Canadians are surprised, and they're calling it discoveries. And I'm not comfortable with the surprise or the discovery approach, but the reality is that this, for most Canadians, is undeniable truths. So I'd like to see just a kind of natural momentum moving forward that is not constantly pushed forward by us. I'd love to see community at large step forward and say, we care enough about this that we're going to do something about it individually and collectively. I love seeing visuals. I love being able to come into a space and say, do I belong here? I want to see something that reflects a recognition of whose land you're on. I want to see something that reflects our sovereign and our continued sovereign presence. I want to hear conversation that is in the present and not in the past. I want to experience hope and safety. And those are things that can be done on a daily basis by the way one greets you, the way one has educated themselves, the way that one has become culturally sensitized, the way that one uses their heart first instead of their ego or judgment. So we talk about that journey, coming from the head space down to the heart space. And through heart speak, we can connect as humans. Whereas up here, we kind of divide each other because there's judgment and ego in this kind of engagement. It's not to say that you don't use your head, but your heart speaks with kindness. And your head sometimes does a disservice to your fullness of humanity and the goodness of humanity. So that's what I would like to experience. I'd like to feel safe for even one day in this country and not feel like I'm an oddity, or that I shouldn't be here, or that I'm at risk because I am Indigenous and a visible minority. I'd like that for my children, my grandchildren, my great-grandchildren, and so on. Because my mom, my grandmother, my great-grandmother, and so on, all the way back, didn't have that sense of safety. And it's possible. It's just, it's just simple free will. What are you going to choose? How are you going to be? And how are you going to breathe life into that? And how consistent can you be with that?
Yeah.
I think every day we can make a good choice. And when we don't, we can apologize and walk out that apology rather than just offer empty words.
Yeah.
I've heard that in this country, some very empty, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, and then nothing follows that up. So you have to wonder about the integrity and the sincerity of that apology. And apologies are important. Accepting responsibility, even if it wasn't you, is important, because there's a privilege in this country that's not given to people who look like me. And indeed to many people of color and gender even. So it's important, that we recognize that we individually we have powers. Collectively, when we bring that together, those powers get magnified, those influences. So be an example. Represent how you'd like to see, within your workplace, perhaps staff engage with people that don't look like them, don't sound like them, and encourage them to treat them well and like everybody else, so that we can dismantle the idea, one, that we're a disappearing race, two, that this is it's supposed to be a safe country, but truly isn't a safe country, because we just have to look at the Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women's report, right? And there were 231 recommendations in that report, and that was downsized from over 1,000. And upon the release of that report, I know I'm digressing a bit here, the violence has increased for us.
Yeah.
There are even more women going missing. So are these reports helping? I think the help comes from the people. It doesn't come from the government down. It comes from the grassroots up. We're the change makers. We hold the power. We decide what kind of society we want to live in. And I believe in, the beauty and hope of a just and fair and welcoming, safe and loving society.
Thank you very much. You kind of answered this, but is there a website where viewers can go to learn more?
There are lots of websites. You can do an easy Google search. There are also lots of groups on social media sites that are talking about this, that have, do a deep dive. And I think that's really important. There are so many places to go and get information on this, but I would draw you back again to Reconciliation Canada. Start there first, because they're covering the entire country, and they can do it by province as well, and then they can redirect you. It's like going down a rabbit hole. You just get more and more connections and spaces and places. I think it's up to the individual to take a leap of faith into that and say, I'm going to do this. I'm not sure where I'm going to enter into. I will start here, but I will continue on. I think, we can't keep saying, come on, come. We have been extending a hand of friendship for 500 years. And it's only perhaps in the last, not even decade, that we see people saying, like they're so surprised that we're still extending a hand of friendship, regardless of the revelation of atrocities committed against entire nations of people and the most vulnerable sector, which is the children. So I'm thinking that In terms of websites, I'm not going to just name one other than Reconciliation Canada because I think that's the best springboard moving forward. But there are lots of individuals who champion this every day, talk about this every day. There are lots of local organizations and groups and associations that do their little part. And all of that creates this, big, enormous kind of momentum of hope that change is coming. It's on its way. It's tangible. That's my great hope.
Thank you so much. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for being here and for helping us to understand and to learn more. And hopefully we can do more together to help others.
Oh, Mayor Roy, I hope that I'm helping, but what I'm actually doing is supporting, right? With your free will and with the town of Whitby's free will. They'll be the change makers that will allow us to feel validated in the time we spend with each other, because time is the most precious gift you can give another.
Exactly. I agree.
Right. This has been time well spent. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Great job.
That was great.